When Hollywood's coldest tough guy meets authentic danger, legends crumble. What you're about to witness is the moment when manufactured toughness encountered something so real, it changed careers forever. This isn't just another celebrity story. This is the night the man with no name discovered he was nobody. Subscribe to see more explosive moments when fake met real and lost everything. What happens when Hollywood's toughest actor calls out a real performer? In 1968, Clint Eastwood was riding high on spaghetti western success, convinced his screen persona made him authentically dangerous. Then he made the mistake of challenging someone who operated beyond acting entirely. This is the brutal story of how 0.09 seconds destroyed the man with no name. October 1968. Clint Eastwood was Hollywood's newest tough guy sensation. The Dollars trilogy had transformed him from a TV cowboy into an international icon of masculine coolness, and his squinting, cigar-chewing persona had convinced audiences, and Clint himself, that he embodied authentic Western toughness. At 38 years old, Clint was experiencing the kind of career explosion that could go to anyone's head. Sergio Leone had made him famous, but Clint believed he had made himself dangerous. Clint started believing his own publicity, recalled his agent Leonard Hershen years later. The spaghetti westerns made him famous for playing tough, and somewhere along the way he convinced himself that playing tough and being tough were the same thing. This dangerous self-deception would lead to one of the most humiliating encounters in Hollywood history. The setting was a charity event at the Beverly Hills Hotel, where entertainment industry figures were gathering to raise money for veterans organizations. It was exactly the kind of cause-oriented event where Clint could showcase his tough guy persona while demonstrating his commitment to American values. Sammy Davis Jr. was there as both performer and major donor, having established himself as one of entertainment's most generous philanthropists. But to Clint, Sammy represented everything that was wrong with modern entertainment: flash over substance, show business over authentic capability. Clint would make comments about variety performers and song and dance men, remembered stuntman Hal Needham, who worked with Eastwood on several films. He saw them as entertainers playing at being tough, while he considered himself the real thing. The confrontation began during cocktail hour, when both men found themselves at the same VIP reception. Clint, emboldened by several whiskeys and surrounded by admirers praising his latest Western, decided this was the perfect opportunity to establish hierarchies of authentic masculinity. "Sammy Davis Jr.," Clint said loudly enough for surrounding guests to hear, his voice carrying the same flat menace that had made him famous in Leone's films. "The man who can do everything except the one thing that matters." It was a calculated insult designed to diminish Sammy's versatility while positioning Clint as someone who understood what matters, presumably the kind of authentic toughness that Clint believed he represented. Sammy looked up from his conversation with veteran actor James Stewart, recognizing the deliberate provocation but maintaining the diplomatic composure that had served him throughout his career. "Clint," Sammy replied pleasantly, "what an interesting perspective. What is it that you think matters most?" The question was asked with genuine curiosity rather than defensiveness, which caught Clint off guard. He had expected either submission or aggression, not thoughtful engagement. "Substance over style," Clint replied, warming to his theme. "Authentic capability instead of entertainment tricks. The difference between being tough and looking tough." The implication was clear. Clint was suggesting that Sammy was all appearance and no reality, while he himself represented authentic masculine capability. "That's a fascinating distinction," Sammy said with the kind of measured response that indicated he was taking the conversation seriously. "How do you define authentic capability?" Clint smiled with the confidence of someone whose recent film success had convinced him that his screen persona reflected genuine competence. "Simple," Clint said. "When the spotlight goes off and the cameras stop rolling, can you still handle yourself? Or are you just another entertainer who needs scripts and directors to tell you how to act tough?" The challenge was unmistakable, and everyone within earshot understood that they were witnessing more than casual conversation. This was Clint Eastwood publicly questioning Sammy Davis Jr.'s authenticity in front of Hollywood's most influential figures. But instead of rising to the bait, Sammy did something that demonstrated exactly why he had survived and thrived in entertainment for over 3 decades. "You raise an interesting point about capability without scripts or direction," Sammy said thoughtfully. "Would you be interested in exploring that distinction under practical conditions?" The suggestion created immediate tension among the surrounding guests. In 1968 Hollywood, challenges between major stars weren't common, and when they occurred, they usually ended careers rather than settling disputes. Clint's competitive instincts engaged immediately. This was exactly the kind of validation opportunity he had been seeking, a chance to prove that his screen toughness reflected genuine capability. "What kind of conditions?" Clint asked, though his tone indicated he was already confident about any comparison between his authentic Western skills and Sammy's entertainment techniques. "Simple demonstration," Sammy replied. "Since you mentioned the importance of handling yourself when cameras aren't rolling, perhaps we should see which approach, systematic acting training or natural capability, produces better results under pressure." Word of the impromptu challenge spread through the reception within minutes. A substantial crowd gathered around the two performers, creating an impromptu arena where Hollywood's newest tough guy would demonstrate his superiority over someone he viewed as merely a variety entertainer. The hotel's event coordinator, recognizing the potential for either great entertainment or major scandal, quickly arranged for the demonstration to take place in a private conference room away from the main reception, where any potential embarrassment could be contained. But containment would prove impossible. Clint prepared for the demonstration with the systematic approach he had developed during his Western films. He adjusted his stance, checked his equipment, and entered the mental state of focused intensity that he had learned from studying screen cowboys and working with professional stunt coordinators. "Real toughness comes from understanding the fundamentals," Clint explained to the assembled observers as he prepared. "Proper stance, controlled breathing, systematic technique. Most entertainers rely on flash and showmanship, but authentic capability requires discipline and training." His preparation was impressive and professional, reflecting genuine effort to develop skills that would support his screen persona. Clint had worked seriously to become competent in areas that his roles required, and his systematic approach demonstrated legitimate commitment to authenticity. Sammy watched Clint's preparation with polite interest, but made no move to demonstrate similar systematic training or professional technique. He remained in his characteristic relaxed posture, looking like someone attending an educational demonstration rather than preparing to participate in serious competition. "Aren't you going to prepare?" Clint asked, noting Sammy's apparent lack of systematic methodology. "I think I'm ready," Sammy replied, adjusting his cufflinks with the same casual attention he gave to most routine details. Clint looked at Sammy's unchanged demeanor with growing confidence. It was exactly what he had expected. An entertainer who relied on natural reflexes rather than systematic training, style over substance, show business techniques instead of authentic capability. A Beverly Hills Hotel events manager volunteered to oversee the demonstration, setting up timing equipment and establishing rules that would ensure objective measurement of systematic training versus entertainment technique. "Standard quick draw," the manager announced. "Systematic Western technique against variety performer approach. We'll see which philosophy produces superior practical results. Ready?" the manager called. Clint took his carefully calculated stance, every element positioned according to Western film training and stunt coordinator instruction. His preparation represented everything that systematic study and professional coaching could achieve when applied by someone committed to developing authentic screen credibility. Sammy remained in his characteristic casual posture, showing no signs of systematic training, professional preparation, or acknowledgement that he was about to face someone who had spent months developing Western skills specifically for this kind of demonstration. "Draw," the manager commanded. What happened next created one of the most devastating moments in Beverly Hills Hotel history and established a new understanding of what authentic capability looked like when it encountered systematic training and obliterated it completely. Clint's draw was professionally executed, systematically correct, and genuinely impressive. His speed of 0.14 seconds demonstrated everything that serious training and dedicated preparation could achieve when applied by someone with legitimate commitment to developing authentic Western skills. But Sammy Davis Jr. had already drawn, aimed, fired, and was in the process of holstering his weapon while lighting a cigarette with his free hand, all accomplished in 0.09 seconds that belonged not just beyond human achievement, but beyond the laws of physics as understood by anyone who witnessed it. Clint stood frozen, his weapon only partially drawn, staring at Sammy with the expression of someone whose entire understanding of toughness, capability, and what constituted authentic masculinity had just been obliterated by evidence that transcended every category he thought he understood. The assembled crowd remained silent for over 2 minutes, trying to process what they had witnessed. Several observers actually questioned whether they had hallucinated the demonstration, because what they had seen challenged fundamental assumptions about the relationship between systematic training and natural capability. Clint was the first to speak, and his words carried the bewilderment of someone whose carefully constructed identity had just been revealed as amateur-level competence. "That's not possible," Clint said, his voice lacking the controlled menace that had made him famous. "I trained with professionals. I studied Western techniques. I developed systematic methodology specifically designed for this kind of capability." Sammy took a contemplative drag from his freshly lit cigarette and looked at Clint with the patient expression of someone who had just provided an education rather than a humiliation. "Different approach," Sammy said with characteristic understatement, though his tone carried genuine sympathy for what Clint was experiencing. But Clint's systematic mind was struggling to process the implications of what had happened from both professional and personal perspectives. His screen persona was based on the assumption that systematic training could create authentic capability, but what he had just witnessed operated beyond systematic training entirely. "Show me that again," Clint requested, his competitive instincts warring with his growing recognition that he might be completely outclassed. The second demonstration was even more devastating. 0.08 seconds of precision that exceeded anything in Clint's experience or theoretical understanding, accomplished while Sammy maintained casual conversation with James Stewart about upcoming film projects. Clint attempted his own follow-up draw, applying maximum systematic technique and professional training. But the harder he concentrated on his carefully learned methodology, the more inadequate his performance looked compared to what Sammy had demonstrated with casual indifference. "I don't understand," Clint said finally, his voice carrying the confusion of someone whose professional identity was based on capabilities that had just been revealed as fundamentally limited. "Everything I learned about Western skills, everything I trained for, everything that made me successful in films, none of it means anything compared to what you just demonstrated." Sammy's response revealed not just superior capability, but understanding of authenticity that existed beyond anything systematic training could achieve, regardless of dedication or professional coaching. "Clint, you've approached Western skills like an actor preparing for a role," Sammy said, his tone carrying genuine respect for Clint's systematic efforts. "You studied techniques, worked with professionals, and developed methodology that serves your screen persona effectively. That's legitimate professional work." He gestured toward Clint's systematic equipment and professional preparation. "But what I'm demonstrating isn't acting or role preparation. It's capability that exists independently of any performance context." Clint listened with the fascination of someone discovering that his area of professional expertise contained dimensions he had never previously imagined. "When capability becomes natural enough," Sammy continued, "the distinction between acting tough and being capable disappears entirely. You don't have to perform authenticity, because authenticity becomes your default state rather than something you achieve through systematic training." The explanation was philosophically devastating for Clint, who was beginning to understand that his systematic approach to screen toughness represented not advancement toward authenticity, but distance from it. "You're saying that my professional training actually separates me from authentic capability?" Clint asked, his voice carrying the horror of someone whose career foundation had just been revealed as counterproductive to genuine competence. "I'm saying that different approaches serve different purposes," Sammy replied diplomatically. "Systematic training produces professional competence that serves entertainment purposes effectively. but authentic capability exists beyond entertainment categories entirely. Clint stood quietly for several minutes, trying to process the implications of what he had witnessed and learned. His screen persona was built on the assumption that systematic preparation could create authentic toughness, but what he had encountered operated beyond systematic preparation entirely. The conversation that followed revealed the depth of Clint's professional crisis and his struggle to understand how his carefully constructed tough guy identity could have been so completely invalidated by someone operating according to completely different principles. "Sammy," Clint said finally, his voice carrying a vulnerability that was completely uncharacteristic for Hollywood's newest tough guy icon. "Yeah, Clint? I need to reconsider what authentic capability actually means," Clint said, "because what you just demonstrated suggests that everything I thought I knew about being tough was really just about appearing tough." Sammy accepted Clint's acknowledgement with characteristic grace, though his expression showed genuine understanding of the psychological impact that comprehensive outclassing could have on someone whose identity was built on systematic competence. "Different approaches work for different people, Clint," Sammy replied gently. "Screen presence and systematic training produce genuine professional results. It's just that some capabilities exist beyond professional categories entirely." But Clint's systematic ego was struggling to accommodate the revelation that his celebrated tough guy persona represented not authentic masculinity, but theatrical approximation, compared to capability that transcended entertainment categories entirely. The psychological impact of having his professional identity so completely challenged created a crisis that would influence his approach to both career choices and public persona for the rest of his life. Over the following months, Clint's behavior became notably less aggressive and more genuinely humble. Industry insiders observed that his encounter with Sammy had taught him the difference between playing tough and encountering authentic capability. Clint was never quite the same after that evening, noted director Don Siegel, who worked with Eastwood on several subsequent films. He was still professional, still capable on screen, but he stopped believing that his screen persona reflected genuine toughness. That actually made his performances more authentic because he wasn't trying to prove anything anymore. The incident became legendary among Beverly Hills Hotel staff and entertainment industry insiders, as an example of how authentic mastery could redefine understanding of capability without destroying the person who had been surpassed. Years later, when Clint was asked about the most important lesson of his early career, he would often reference that evening at the Beverly Hills Hotel as the night he learned the difference between systematic competence and natural mastery. "Sammy taught me that real toughness isn't about training or technique or professional preparation," Clint explained during a rare interview in the 1980s. "It's about capabilities that exist beyond any system or methodology. I had been working really hard to appear authentically tough, but he showed me that authentic capability doesn't require effort. It just is." The encounter influenced Clint's approach to subsequent roles, leading him away from characters whose toughness was based on systematic competence toward roles that emphasized natural capability and understated authority. "After that night, I stopped trying to prove I was tough and started focusing on characters who were capable without needing to demonstrate it," Clint reflected. "That shift made my performances more believable because I wasn't performing toughness anymore. I was just being competent." The 0.09 seconds had lasted only an instant, but the humility it created would influence Clint's career for decades, proving that sometimes the most valuable education comes from having your assumptions challenged by someone whose mastery operates according to principles you never knew existed. The man with no name had encountered someone who needed no name because his capability spoke louder than any reputation, and in learning that lesson, Clint Eastwood had become a more authentic performer by understanding the limits of performance itself. In Hollywood, where tough guy personas were often more important than actual capability, Clint's willingness to acknowledge superior mastery and learn from it actually enhanced his reputation as a thoughtful performer rather than damaging his credibility as a screen tough guy. The Beverly Hills Hotel demonstration had begun with Clint questioning Sammy's authenticity and ended with Clint understanding that authenticity couldn't be achieved through systematic training. It could only be recognized and respected when encountered in its natural form. Years later, entertainment historians would recognize the encounter as a defining moment that separated actors who played tough from performers who understood that the deepest toughness was the kind that never needed to prove itself. Clint Eastwood had entered that conference room as Hollywood's newest tough guy, convinced that his systematic preparation made him authentically dangerous. He left understanding that authentic capability was something you either possessed naturally or learned to respect in others, and that the wisest response to encountering superior mastery was not competition but appreciation. The lesson transformed not just his career but his understanding of what masculinity actually meant when it wasn't being performed for audiences or cameras, and that transformation made him a better actor because he was no longer acting at being tough. He was simply being competent within his own limitations while respecting capabilities that existed beyond those limitations entirely.